So let's go up to our nodes. I'll run into it. Oh, boom, it got harvested. And we can see the debug message there in the console. Let's harvest some more resources. Boom, harvested, harvested. Now, that didn't really do anything yet. It's just decreasing an integer value. But now that we know that we're interacting with it, we can actually generate the resources, pick them up, add them to the player's inventory, and then we'll kind of be on our way to getting this resource harvesting thing going. So let's create, let's say another folder in objects, and we'll call it pickups. So this will be anything we can generate that can be picked up into the player's inventory, like a rock or a piece of wood. Let's do right click on objects, new folder, and we're going to say pickups here. Enter for OK. Now let's right click on the pickups folder and do new. I guess we need the GD script first. So this is actually going to be a node because the pickup is going to exist inside of the scene, which will add a resource to the player's inventory, but it does need to have a scene presence. So we'll add the script here and we'll say pickup.gd. And this will inherit from, I guess, static body 2D, since it will be a physics object in the scene. So let's create that. And we have this pickup.gd script. Okay, so in the pickup.gd script, let's give it the class name pickup. Okay, save that. So let's create a new scene now for our first pickup. Scene, new scene, other node, and let's look for pickup. Since we created the class name, we can just create it right here. Create our pickup, go to 2D view, and our pickup is going to need a sprite node. So let's right click, add child node, sprite 2D. And let's rename our first pickup to be pickup underscore rock. Let's hit Control S and we'll save it in our project. So let's save it into the resources pickups folder, pickup rock dot here, save it. And our static body is also going to need a collision shape. So let's right click here, add child node, collision shape 2D. And our shape is just going to be a circle shape. Okay, so we'll add that in. Now we need the sprite 2D. Let's go up to our art and let's get a object for the pickup resource. So I have it under the resources folder, rock item. Let's drag that into texture. And now let's make the collision shape actually match the shape here. So collision shape, click on shape 2D, shrink the circle to right around there. I guess here is nice. So a radius of 4. And now we'll have our pickup inside of the scene. Okay, so with our pickup, whenever we harvest the resource, we want to generate that many pickups so that our character can pick it up and add it to his inventory. So let's go to the resource node script, and we're going to add in which pickup we want to instantiate. So at export var pickup type, and this will be a packed scene. So we'll save that, click on resource node, and we need to assign our pickup type, which is, of course, pickup rock.tscn. So drag that in there. So now we have the pickup we're going to spawn when we harvest. So let's add in the spawning above when we actually decrease the amount. We'll create the pickup and then we'll decrease the amount. Okay, so let's run a for loop on spawning the pickup for the amount of times that we are actually generating resources. So we can do for in amount. So basically we'll just run code the amount of times. And then n is like which instance of running through this loop it is, starting at 0 and going up to amount -1. So we're going to want to spawn a resource every time we do that. So we need to have a spawn resource function. So we'll make that spawn resource. And that's going to mean we're going to create an instance of our pickup type. So var pickup instance equals, and then our pickup instance is going to be of a type pickup. And that's going to be equal to pickup type dot instantiate as pickup. And for right now, we'll just start with that. So we have harvest. We're going to spawn a resource. We spawn the resource. It should be in the scene. Oh, we do need to add it as a child to something, though. So let's take a look at our 2D game level. We can see that our resource nodes are going to be under the game level. So we can get the parent and add the pickup to the parent game level. So let's get reference to the parent, but we only need to do that once. So we'll do something like at onReadyVar level parent equals get parent. Okay, okay, it looks like that should work. So we'll take the level parent and we'll add a child, and the child is going to be the pickup instance. So whenever we spawn a pickup, we add it to the level as a child. So that would mean that in the hierarchy, if we look at game level, it'll be under here and show up somewhere down there. Okay, let's hit play and let's harvest the rock. So I'm going to come down here and boom. Okay, now we got the pickup to actually show up here. If we go up here, the next pickup shows up. We can actually check the remote view, look at the game level, and we can see our nodes are actually spawning down here. And then we can add another one. Okay, look at remote view, and yeah, we have 3 pickups showing up there. Now, those are all spawning at the 0, 0 point, but where we want them to spawn is wherever the resource node it is. So let's jump into the resource node script, spawn resource. We want to take the pickup instance dot position, and we want that to be equal to the position of our resource node. Okay, save, run again, and let's harvest those nodes. We come down here. Okay, we got the pickup to show up down there. Hit this, pickup shows there, pickup shows there. Now that's not very interesting if the pickups just show right on top of the node. So what I actually kind of want to happen is that these pickups are going to launch themselves away from the resource node. And once they've landed on the ground, then we'll say that they can be picked up. So in the pickup script, let's disable the collision shape until the pickup has actually landed on the ground. So in the pickup, let's do @onReady for collision shape, which is going to be a collision shape 2D, and that'll be equal to $collision shape 2D. When we start the script on ready, I want to take collision shape. And so what we're going to want to do is that whenever we create a pickup through the resource node script, we'll kind of want to launch it, disable its collision shape, move it a bit, and then once that's done, we will re-enable the collision shape so that the pickup can be picked up by the player. So inside of our pickup script, let's create that function so that we can move the pickup. We'll say function launch, which is going to take a, let's call it a velocity, which will be a vector2 having a direction and a magnitude, and then a time. Let's call it move duration. So that will be a float. So because this is a static body, we're going to have to set up our movement all through code. So let's go up here to the top and let's add in some variables. I'll say variable velocity, or we could say launch velocity here. And we'll default that to a vector2.0. So when we pass in the launch velocity, we'll set that. So launch velocity equals velocity. We'll also have move duration, which will be a float. We'll default that to 0. And then we'll say variable time since launch, which will also make a float and default to 0. And then we'll say variable launching is a Boolean, default that to false. So when we launch the pickup, we'll say time since launch equals 0 because we're restarting it. The launching is going to be equal to true. And the launch velocity set here, I guess we also need to set the move duration up there. I'll rename this to be duration, and then move duration equals duration. Just having different names so it's clear that this is the member variable up here, and then this is the parameter. Okay. Next, for function process, we're going to check if launching. So if the pickup is currently launching, then we're going to move it. So we'll say that the position is going to add in the launch velocity times the delta, which is the time between frames. And then we're going to add in time since launch plus equals the delta. And if time since launch is greater than or equal to the move duration, then we're going to stop the launching. So launching equals false. So that will handle the movement. What we also want to do is when the pickup is launching, we want to disable the collision shape. So let's actually add a setter there for the launching. So set is launching. So launching equals is launching. And then we'll say collision shape dot enabled is going to be equal to whatever the launching value is. So if we set launching and launching is true, then the collision shape is disabled. But if we set it to false, then the collision shape is going to be disabled. Now let's go back into resource node, and we need to calculate the speed and the direction that we want to spawn this pickup in. So that means at the harvesting node at the top, we're going to need to set a launch speed for the pickup. So let's export var launch speed, and that'll be a float. We can default this to something like 100 pixels per second, I guess. And we'll also have to do a launch time. So export var launch time, and we'll call this something like a float and 0.25 seconds. So that'll mean it'll travel for 1/4 of a second at 100 pixels per second. And then we'll generate the direction down here. In order to get the direction, we need to do var direction, which is going to be a vector2, and we're going to set that equal to a new vector. So we'll say vector2. Then we need an x and a y value. So for the x value, we're going to randomly generate between two floats, and that's going to be negative 1.0 and 1.0 positive. Then we're going to do the same thing with the y value. Rand f underscore range, negative 1.0 to 1.0. So basically it's going to generate a random direction, and that can be anything from left, up, down, and right, and everything in between. So effectively it's going to create like a circle, and then our vector is going to point somewhere along that circle. So it could basically go 360 degrees. Now to make sure that when we get these values that it's just going to be a pure direction with a magnitude of 1, we want to normalize this vector with dot normalized after we create it. So that gives us our normalized direction, and we need to launch the pickup now. So pickup instance dot launch as the function, and we're going to pass in the velocity, which is direction times launch speed up here at the top, launch speed, and then we give it the time, which is the launch time or launch duration. Let's rename it launch duration. Okay, so that's our two parameters. And now the pickup instance can launch. Let's hit play and let's see how that works, if it works at all. So I'll come down here and we hit the rock or a node. Boom. So we get a problem here, which is that the disable on the collision shape is not something we can actually set, supposedly. Let's see, collision shape. Then we have the disabled property. Okay, so we want disabled as the name of that property, not disable. Now we can save it, run it again. Let's go back to the OR. We hit it. Okay, and there we actually get it to spawn with our launch. It moves at a direction for a set time, and then it stops. And then supposedly it also re-enables it. So let's hit this one, and you can see the direction's randomized. So we can do that a few times. Let's also take the tall rock resource node, and let's change the starting resources, and let's make it 3, or you know what, let's even make it 5. So that means it's going to take 5 hits, generate 5 pickups before it goes away. So let's hit play, and let's harvest this node. So okay, that one didn't quite work. Let's see, starting resources 5. Let's check the game level. If we click on these, okay, they all have the starting resources of 5. Let's look at the script, see what's going on here. So current resources is going to be equal to starting resources, which should be set to 5 here. Let's hit play one more time. I'm going to look at the remote scene. Let's click on the resource things here, and we can see the current resources is actually 0. So I guess current resources isn't being set on load. Interesting. Let's add a breakpoint here to this line, and we'll hit play and see what's actually going on. So we come in here. The current resources is going to be set to the starting resources. I see what's going on. So when we run the setter function here for current resources, we never actually set the field value. So current resources equals the value we pass in. Or instead of just calling it value, we could say resource count. Okay, so I'll copy that, paste that there, and paste that there as well. Now we can hit save. We won't need this breakpoint anymore. Hit play, and now that should be working. Let's go down here. We hit the rock. Okay, we got 1. Let's hit it again. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so you see we harvested 5 nodes here. Now these pickups actually are static bodies. I really should have made them area 2Ds because you can see that as a static body, they interact with physics. We don't want them to interact with physics. We just want to be able to pick them up. So we'll have to change that. But yeah, all of our resource nodes, we can harvest them 5 times here. And this one, 5 times as well. Okay, so that is pretty much working. Now we have 15 pickups and we need to be able to add them to the inventory. Let's exit out of the game. Let's go into the 2D scene for the pickup rock. Okay, in the script here for pickup, we're going to want to retype this to area 2D. And we're going to retype the pickup rock in the scene to area 2D as well. So change type with right click, change type, area 2D. Now a area 2D, we can look for an interaction, but it's not going to affect the physics. But we still should be able to move it with script like this. Let's test that by hitting play. I'll run in here. So we get our pickups and they are in the scene, but we can walk over them, which is what we would expect actually. Okay, so let's hit close. Now I did notice that the pickups, they still have the sorting going on. So inside of the ordering, for now, I'm going to just change this to be something like -5. So if something like the player has a value of 0, it's just going to hide behind it at all times. So let's hit play and let's test that out here again. So this will just basically force the pickups to hide behind the player by default. So for our pickup, we can have it monitor to see when a body enters it. And if that body has a inventory, then we'll just add the pickup to the inventory and we will remove the pickup from the scene. So first off, let's go to player. Let's call it a node here for the inventory. I will right click, add a child node, and let's make it a new node. I'll rename this to be inventory. And now let's create a script for inventories. So for the inventory, let's add a new script here. We can leave it in characters/inventory.gd, I suppose. Create, and let's give it a class name inventory. In the inventory, let's create a dictionary for resources. So it will include which type of resources are in the player's inventory and how many of those resources are in the inventory for each type. So in our inventory, we can create a dictionary for resources that we want to track. Something like @export var resources, and this will be a dictionary, and we set it to equals. This thing equals curly braces means dictionary here. So our dictionary will contain keys, which will be the resource that is in the resources dictionary, and then the values, which will be how many are in there. So let's go back to pickup rock, and we can see that in the nodes, we can do body entered, body node 2D. So basically in our script, we want to connect to the area 2D itself. Instead of connecting it right here, just to make sure it always works for any pickups we create, let's actually just set that up in code. So if we have, let's say, a function ready, so function underscore ready here, and then we're going to connect to itself. So let's do body entered, and the callable is going to be on body entered. Yep, let's just do that. And then down here at the bottom, we'll make that function underscore on body entered. Then we have the body node, which is a node 2D. Let's pass. And then I want to add the underscore back up here at the top. Okay. So basically when the script starts, we're connecting to its own signal. And then we can come down here. We'll check that if the body that entered the pickup has a inventory, then we're going to add the pickup to the inventory, and we're going to remove the pickup from the scene. So let's do var inventory equals body dot find child. In the find child, the pattern we're looking for is that it is from the inventory class. So you can use a string for, I think, the node name, but this will also work with class types. So let's check inventory.gd. So class name inventory should match here. So basically a node that has a inventory script attached should be found by this body.findChild inventory. So if the inventory is valid, we're going to do inventory.add resources. So let's say resource type, and we'll write that up at the top, and then the amount, which is going to be 1. So up at the top, let's add in @export var resource type. And that will just be a type of resource. We can come up here and be more specific later on, maybe make it like build materials instead of just resources, but it should work fine for now. So now our inventory needs to add resources function. So in inventory, let's create function, add resources. So we need a type, which is going to be a resource, and we need a amount, which is going to be an integer. So when we add resources, we're going to find the key in the dictionary if it exists, and if not, we're going to add the key to the dictionary, and then we're going to set the amount of the resource inside of it. So we're going to do resources of type, and we're going to set that equal to whatever the current value is. So resources.type, and we're going to add the amount. Okay, now back in pickup, once we add the resources, we can queue free on the pickup. So after adding the pickup to the inventory, we need to queue it free from the scene. So let's remove it with queue free. Let's go ahead and test now and see if all of that actually works. So let's hit play. I'm going to look at the remote scene. Let's expand the game level, the player, and look at the inventory here. So in the inspector over on the right, we can see the resources, the dictionary here. Now let's look at our game view. So I'm going to harvest this resource. Let's go pick it up. Okay. So it almost worked. We got to the add resources. So invalid get index, null. The type is null. Right. So we need to actually pass in a resource type to that. So that would be coming from pickups here. So the resource type is something we actually didn't set on the resource. So that makes a lot of sense. Let's click on resource, and we'll need to set a resource type here. So for the resource type, let's go into the items folder, and I'll right click and create a new resources folder inside of here. So these are item resources because they exist inside of the inventory. Let's right click here, create a new script, and this is going to inherit from resources. And we can call the resource script something like resource item, and it inherits from resource, not from resources. So resource item, or item resource, whatever makes more sense to you. Let's create that. Okay, so now we have this inside of the folder. Let's give it some fields such as @export var display name, which is going to be a string. We can give it a texture as a texture 2D as well, so that if we need to display it in an inventory or something, we know what to show for it. And aside from that, we'll just hit Control S and save it. Oh wait, we do need to give it a class name. So class name is going to be resource item. Yep, okay, that makes sense to me. Now let's create a actual resource from that script. So let's right click in resources, item resources that is, go to new resource, look for item resource or resource item, double click on it to create it, and then we're going to call this a rock item or resource rock. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Okay, let's save that there. And now we can double click on it. We can give it the display name rock. We'll give it the same resources texture that we used to show it in the game. So rock item. So if it exists in the inventory, it'll actually show up with the same image. And now let's assign resource rock.res to pickup rock. So if we drag this into here, now we have the item resource type associated with the pickup, which is the object that exists in the game. So we pick up a copy of the actual resource, not the pickup rock node itself. So let's save that. And yep, okay, let's test things out again. Let's hit play. Let's go pick up a resource. Let's walk into it. Okay, so we have the resource now. Invalid get index on dictionary. So I'm guessing it's this part right here, trying to look up a value that doesn't exist. So let's add a if statement up here. So do if resources.has, and we'll look for a type. And I think that's looking for the key. Then we'll do this as before. Okay, so let's save that. Else, what we'll do is we'll say resources at type is going to be equal to the amount, because we're assuming that it hasn't been set yet, so the amount is 0. Let's give that a shot. I'll add a breakpoint for both of these, and we'll see what happens. I'll hit play. Let's go down here. Let's get the resource. Okay, so of course it didn't have the type, so we're going to try to add it now. I'll get rid of the breakpoint. Let's hit continue. Okay, execution resumed. So let's take a look at our remote scene, the game level player inventory. So we can see in the dictionary that we have a size of 1 now. And so when we added it, I believe this should be the resource here, and then this should be the count. So let's continue. Let's get another pickup so we get it, and let's continue. Control's got a little screw there, but let's go click on the inventory, and let's see if it was able to add another copy of it to the inventory. So we expand the dictionary, and now we have 2 of the item. So the only thing is that the item's kind of showing up a little weird here. Let's close the game there for a second. For the type, I'm going to actually rename this to be resource item. And let's add resources. Yeah, add resources. Yeah, okay, sure, that's fine still. I wonder if this changes anything. So let's go gather a couple resources and see how that shows now. Okay, so we got our resources, remote, game level, player, inventory. Let's look at the dictionary, and it's still showing up